Of all the creatures whispered about in the north, none were as feared as the Nuckelavee, a skinless terror the sea itself could not contain. I'm James, and this is Mythic Tides. On the far-flung islands of Orkney, battered by Atlantic winds and salt spray, there lingers a name so dreadful that the old folk would scarcely dare to utter it. They would whisper it only with a muttered prayer for protection, fearing that to even speak it aloud might draw down disaster. That name is the Nuckelavee. This monster is no quaint goblin or mischievous sprite. It is remembered as the most malevolent of all Orkney's uncanny beings, a hybrid demon, part man and part horse, and wholly dedicated to malice. Islanders laid at its feet every conceivable misfortune: withered crops, plague among their cattle, sickness that passed from house to house. Folklorist Katharine Briggs, surveying the field of Scotland's demons, declared the Nuckelavee the nastiest of them all, the very embodiment of unrelenting evil. According to 19th century Orcadian tradition, the terror was so persuasive that when the Nuckelavee's name was spoken at all, it was spoken softly, accompanied by the sign of the cross or a whispered, "Good Lord preserve us." This was not a fireside fancy to amuse children, it was a dark reality woven into the fears and explanations of daily island life. The appearance of the Nuckelavee is singularly horrific, even amongst the long roll call of Celtic and Norse monsters. If a centaur is a noble fusion of man and horse, the Nuckelavee is its perverse inversion, a grotesque, skinless parody. Most accounts describe a gigantic horse, broad and powerful, upon whose back is fused a human torso. But the man has no legs, instead its arms are grotesquely long, trailing down until its clawed hands almost scrape the earth. Above them lolls a head far too large for its body, rolling restlessly from shoulder to shoulder as though the demon cannot keep it upright. The horse portion of the creature is no less dreadful. It has but a single glaring eye, shining like a coal in the dark, and a mouth as wide as a whale's, spewing forth hot and noxious vapours. Some accounts add a grotesque refinement. The human head is said to be 10 times larger than that of a mortal man, its snout protruding like that of a pig. But most appalling of all is its lack of skin. Not a patch of hide or hair covers its body. Instead, its raw flesh is laid bare, dark blood pulsing through yellow veins, muscles twitching beneath translucent sheaths, white sinews standing out stark in the moonlight. Walter Traill Dennison, the Orcadian folklorist who recorded the most famous account, described with precision: there was not a hair on the monster's body, for the very good reason that he had no skin. Every movement of muscle, every surge of blood, could be seen as the Nuckelavee stalked across the land. It is little wonder that those who imagined this sight in the dark claimed to be struck dumb with terror. This was not a creature of nature, it was a nightmare made flesh. If some spirits of Scottish lore were mischievous, kelpies luring travellers into rivers, brownies sulking if slighted, the Nuckelavee was of another order entirely. This was not a prankster, this was a destroyer. Dennison left no doubt. Nuckelavee was a monster of unmixed malignity, never willingly resting from doing evil to mankind. Its power, islanders said, lay in its breath. A single exhalation from those whale-wide jaws could blight crops, blacken fields, or spread pestilence amongst animals and people alike. Cattle would sicken, horses would falter with mortachine, glanders, the farmers called it. No phantom malady at all, but a real ghastly infection of horses, oozing sores, laboured breath, and a wasting death that could sweep through a stable like wildfire. Small wonders the islanders saw the devil's hand in it, and men themselves might be struck down by sudden, inexplicable illnesses. One tradition in Orkney blamed it directly for calamity in the 1700s, when islanders began burning seaweed to produce kelp, or soda ash. The smoke, so the story goes, enraged the Nuckelavee, In retaliation, it breathed disease into horses, killed cattle, and blasted the crop with its foul vapours. And yet, for all its power, the Nuckelavee had its weakness. Like so many spirits of waterhorse stock, it could not abide fresh water. Rain kept it penned in the sea. A loch, a river, even a rivulet, these were barriers it could not pass. Islanders whispered that a splash of water was enough to make it recoil. That one saving grace is at the heart of the only tale of survival, the famous story of Tamas, remembered and retold by Walter Traill Dennison in 1891. Tammas was an Orcadian farmer trudging home one night beneath a starless sky. The sea lay silent, the wind still. Then he heard it. Not the clatter of hoofs, but something heavier, wetter, more dreadful, the sucking thud of enormous feet on sodden ground. When he turned, his blood froze. Out of the darkness lumbered a shape like no creature of God's creation. A monstrous horse, its body raw and flayed, steaming in the night. Upon its back, welded into its spine, rose a man's trunk, head far too large, arms so long they scraped the earth. Its one crimson eye burned in the dark, and its breath reeked so foul that the grass itself withered. Tamas ran, the Nuckelavee pursued. Each stride of the demon drew it closer, his breath searing his heels. Tamas knew well enough that none survived a meeting with the devil of the sea, yet through his terror he remembered what the old folk said: it cannot cross fresh water. With desperation he stooped at the edge of the loch, scooped a handful and flung it back. The droplets struck the monster, it shrieked, a sound so hideous that Tammas felt his very bones shudder. For a heartbeat, it faltered. Ahead lay a narrow stream. Tammas gathered the last of his strength and leapt. He landed, sprawling on the far bank. Behind him, the Nuckelavee reared, its arms flailing, its claws grazing the brim of his hat, but it could not cross. With a howl of thwarted rage, it stopped dead at the stream's edge. Tammas lived. And that is the sole tale of survival. No other man has claimed such fortune. Folklorists later noted how close the story lies to Robert Burns' Tam O'Shanter, in which witches chase a rider to the edge of a bridge but cannot follow across the running water. The motif is old, recurring across Scottish lore. Water is the final boundary between human and demon. This tale gave us the most vivid details of the Nuckelavee, its rolling head, its yellow veins, its hatred of water, and became the definitive account in Orkney. Orcadian folklore did not picture the Nuckelavee as roaming free at all times. No, the people said that its movements followed the rhythm of the year, bound up with the power of the sea itself. During the gentle summer months, when the waters lay calm, the demon was imprisoned beneath the waves by a benevolent spirit, the mother of the sea. She alone was said to have the strength to hold it down, to fetter its fury, to keep the island safe. But the mother had an enemy, Tairan, the spirit of winter storms. Each spring, Mither and Tairan fought a cosmic battle for mastery of the sea. For as long as the Mither held sway, the gales were stilled, the ocean smoothed, and the Nuckelavee remained chained in the deeps. Yet as autumn advanced, the Mither grew weak. Tairan broke free, and with him, the devil of the sea was loosed once more upon the land. In this way, the old islanders explained the changing of their seasons. Summer calm meant the demon was fettered, winter gales meant it prowled the shores once again. And so the Nuckelavee was not only a monster of the night, but part of a larger cosmic drama, the struggle between storm and calm, wrath and mercy, chaos and order. The earliest possible mention lies in a 1529 Latin manuscript, Descriptio Insularum Orcadiarum by Jaw Ben, an early surveyor of the islands. There he speaks of a malign spirit upon Stronsay, vague, shadowy, but perhaps a distant echo of the demon we know. It was not until the 19th century that the Nuckelavee found its fullest description. Walter Traill Dennison, a folklorist born and bred on Sanday, gathered the old tales with diligence. In 1891, he published a definitive account, the Scottish Antiquary, later reprinted in Scottish fairy and folk tales. His prize was the story of Tammas. Outside of Orkney, in Shetland, a cousin was feared, the Nuckelavee, literally the Great Sea Devil. In 1822, Samuel Hibbert recorded Shetlanders' dread of a malevolent water spirit, sometimes called Nickel or Nuggle, sometimes a muckle leviathan. He even mused that the Nuck might be tied to Old Nick, the devil himself, and perhaps even to the Latin Nuckelavee, to kill. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, however, belief in the literal demon had waned. Ernest Marwick, a folklorist in the mid-20th century, suggested that such beings once served as explanations for calamities that science could not yet account for: crop failures, livestock disease, and sudden illness. Where then did such a fiendish creature come from? The Nuckelavee did not spring from a single tale or moment of invention. It was rather the child of many traditions, mingled and reforged in Orkney's windswept cauldron of cultures. The very name hints at its dark parentage. Walter Traill Dennison, our 19th century folklorist, traced it to the Orcadian dialect word Nuckelavee, meaning, quite bluntly, devil of the sea, a name less like a poetic metaphor and more like a blunt warning. Scholars have noted too how close it lies to Norse words such as nick or knock, water sprites, shapeshifters, spirits that slip between horse and man. And indeed, Orkney and Shetland were steeped in Norse influence for centuries. Until 1472, these islands belonged firmly to the Scandinavian world. Norse settlers brought their own water demons, their nixies and necks. And when these mingled with the Celtic and Pictish traditions already lingering on the islands, something uniquely dreadful emerged. The Nuckelavee is that fusion, half Kelpie, half Norse Traill, all malice. Folklorist Ernest Marwick noted just how strong this blend was. Orcadian tales, he argued, are layered like geological strata, Norse bedrock overlain by Celtic soil. And he pointed out that the Nuckelavee is strikingly close in character to the Norwegian Nuch, the Shetlandic Juggle, and the Highland waterhorse, the Eik Uska. These cousins across the north all share the same warning: beware what rides the waves. Linguistics too offers its trail of clues. Nuckelavee may very well carry echoes of Nick, that old familiar byname for the devil himself. Some hear in it the French and Latin lavie, to wash, tying it to water. Others connect it to the English word nucker, meaning water dragon, or the Shetlandic nicker, all harking back to the Germanic nickor and nix. Over time, oral tradition twisted it into forms like mucklavee, nicklavee. But beyond philology and etymology, the Nuckelavee was something deeper, a personification of fear itself. Life in Orkney was never easy. The sea that fed you could just as easily drown you. The wind that drove your boats could flatten your crops. Disease might sweep your cattle in a season, or famine gnaw at the island when storms kept boats from the shore. How better to make sense of such random cruelties than by giving them a face, however hideous? Thus the Nuckelavee came to embody all that was hostile and uncontrollable. In its raw flesh and bulging veins, the islanders saw the very storms and pestilence that harried them. The motif of the horse demon was not unique to Orkney. Across the British Isles we find it. The Highland Eik Uska, a crueler cousin of the Kelpie, even Odin's great steed, Sleipnir, galloping across land and sea, or the great god Njord, sea lord with equine associations. In Norse myth, Hel, queen of the underworld, rides a three-legged horse that brings death and decay, a vision not so far from the pestilent Nuckelavee. Orkney's demon is part of this pan-European chorus, with its own grisly voice. And finally, Christianity lent its colour. By the 19th century, Orcadians did not speak the Nuckelavee's name without also invoking heaven. Good Lord preserve us. The struggle of sea, mither and Teiran could be heard as an allegory for good and evil. In Shetland, fishermen even prayed to the sea mither for protection from the devil before sailing. The old fears were not erased, but absorbed into the new faith, the raw edges smoothed out with prayer. The Nuckelavee then is not simply a monster, it's a tapestry of influences: Norse, Celtic, Christian, a devil of the sea stitched together from centuries of dread, given hoofs and sinews, and a name whispered in terror. The Nuckelavee may be the darkest of Scotland's monsters, but it does not stand alone. Across the Isles and Highlands, its cousins stamp and splash, each a warning of what waits by the water's edge. Perhaps the best known of all, the Kelpie haunts rivers and lochs in the lowlands. It's a shapeshifter, but most often takes the form of a fine, glossy-coated pony grazing by the water. Children or travellers are tempted to mount, only to find themselves glued fast to its hide. Then, with a sudden plunge, the Kelpie drags them into the depths. The name itself comes from Lowland Scots, possibly from the Gaelic word for colt. Yet unlike the Nuckelavee, the Kelpie is not always wholly evil. Some stories paint it as a trickster, a danger to be wary of, but not the embodiment of pure malice. Still, mothers across Scotland warned their children, never play too near to the water. Up in the Highlands, the Each Uisce, literally water horse, takes the Kelpie's menace and multiplies it. It lurks in sea inlets and mountain lochs alike, sometimes appearing as a magnificent horse, sometimes as a striking young man. But those who accept its lure are doomed. If mounted, the Each Uisce gallops straight into the depths, devours its rider and spits the liver back to the surface. This detail, the liver floating alone in the water, is repeated so often in Highland lore that it became the signature of the beast. Unlike the lonely Nuckelavee, there are many Each Uisce, one for every orc. But in cruelty and appetite, they stand almost as equals. In Shetland we meet the smaller cousin, the Nuggle or Juggle. This creature is a little grey water horse with a comically large tail shaped like a wheel. Far less murderous than its kin, it is mischievous rather than malevolent. It delights in startling horses, playing tricks, or luring the unwary into a tumble. Harmless? Not entirely, but not the devil incarnate either. Shetlanders, however, always drew a sharp distinction. The playful Nuggle in their streams is one thing, the terrible Nuckelavee quite another. Orkney and Shetland had yet another sea-haunting race, the Finn folk. Unlike the horse spirits, the Finn folk were sorcerers, shape-shifting men and women of the deep. They emerged in summer to steal humans. A Finnman might kidnap a fisherman, a Finn wife might claim a young man for a husband, dragging them down into the Finn folk Ahim, their shadowy underwater realm. The Finn folk were blamed for sudden storms, drowned boats, and mysterious disappearances. They are, in a sense, the aristocracy of Orkney's sea demons, not a single brute like the Nuckelavee, but an entire race. And there are others, the Selkies, those seal folk who slip out of their skins to walk on the land as men or women, are usually benign, sometimes tragic, more the subject of ballads than nightmares. The Blue Men of Minch, however, are another matter, said to haunt the strait between Lewis and the mainland. These mermen, with their sky-covered skin, could whip up storms to sink ships. Sailors whispered that their leader would challenge a ship's captain to a rhyming duel, and if the captain failed to answer, the vessel was lost. Like the Nuckelavee, they made the sea itself seem alive with malice, waiting to swallow the careless. All these were warnings not to stray too close to dangerous waters, but none equalled the sheer malevolence of the Nuckelavee. So what are we to make of this nightmarish creature, this skinless horse demon of Orkney? On one level, it's simply another entry in the long ledger of Celtic and Norse water beasts. But the Nuckelavee stands apart, pure malice, no mischief, no kindness, no reprieve, only harm. The embodiment of Orkney's storms, diseases and hardships given flesh and blood. Its story is how the islanders made sense of calamity. Today, it lingers not in belief, but in story. A nightmare once whispered by firelight has galloped out into the wider world, but it still chills and fascinates. It is, and will remain, the devil of the sea. If you enjoyed that video on the Nuckelavee, please do subscribe for more. I'm James, this is Mythic Tides. I hope to see you again soon.